Hello, friends, and welcome to
Xing the Gap.
Today, Xing the Gap is all about animals, as my two guests are Jonathan Balcombe and Joanne McArthur. Jonathan is a world-renowned biologist, ethologist, and author of popular science books on the inner lives of animals, including Pleasurable Kingdom, Second Nature, and What a Fish Knows, a New York Times bestseller. Joanne is an award-winning photojournalist, speaker, and founder of WeAnimalsMedia. She's visited over 60 countries to document our complex relationship with animals. As a pack, we talk about ethology, animal photojournalism, try and try again, how you protect what you love, animal sentience, animal playfulness, things getting better and worse, cultural influence on meat eating, the effects of vegetarianism, leading by example, the ick-factor of lab-grown meat, factory farms as conflict zones, Ad-gag laws, and trivia for plant eaters. Ask yourself a question and I'll give you a point. Go ahead.
Okay. Who is the TV character who's related to the line or song "You Can't Make Friends with Salad"?
The only thing I could think of would be SpongeBob SquarePants.
You don't make bread with salad. You don't make Homer Simpson.
Yeah, it's Lisa who's the vegetarian.
There you go, Lisa.
She gets made fun of. That's it.
You do make friends with salad.
Xing the Gap.
Jonathan Balcombe, Joanne McArthur, welcome to Xing the Gap.
Great to be here, Rick.
So just to situate us in the big picture of history, do you identify with a generational cohort, or do you identify Jonathan as a boomer?
I think I'm a baby boomer, 1959. I think that qualifies me.
Oh, you're right in the heart of it. You're almost at the edge of like, no, I'm not a baby boomer.
I don't feel like a baby of any sort.
And Joanne,
Yeah.
what about you? Are you Gen X?
I'm 76.
You're squarely in the heart of that demographic, which I also share. And I usually actually speak to a millennial. So a lot of my trivia questions later, Joanne, are not going to surprise you much because we might know some of the same things, which is okay.
You are assuming that I watched TV in that era, perhaps. So let's see what happens.
Yes. Okay. Now, can you please just tell me the short story version of where you're from, what you do, and how you got here? I know a lot about you, but my audience maybe doesn't. So maybe we'll start with you, Jonathan.
Sure. My field is ethology, which is the study of animal behavior. From my earliest memories, fascinated by animals, and fortunately, that was cultivated by parents who shared that interest. We were also travelers. Well, my mom was the instigator of all the family travel. We moved from England, where I was born, to New Zealand when I was 3. And then at age 8, we moved to Canada, moved to Toronto and lived there for 20 years, and lived in the States for 31 years after going to grad school, raising a daughter, working for various nonprofit animal protection organizations. And now retired with a small R. I find I'm just as busy as when I was sort of doing someone else's bidding. But I focus primarily on writing books and do some public speaking and a little bit of writing consulting occasionally. But it's nice to set my own schedule, but I find myself just as busy as ever. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah, that's probably the way you like it, right? You wouldn't assume after a life of having a busy brain and body that you'd stop.
That's right. We like our projects. I think they're really important to us, and it keeps life meaningful.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be done for animals, so that keeps it meaningful too.
Indeed, which has been inspiring reading about both of your work. So Joanne, I know you from the neighborhood, but maybe you can tell us just a little bit about your story, where you're originally from, maybe, and also what makes you do what you do.
Yeah, Rick, you and I met at the dog park.
Indeed.
And that's in Toronto. But ahead of my landing here, I was someone who's very interested in the world and why we do the things we do, which is why photojournalism makes perfect sense for me. But before I did animal photojournalism, I would shoot just about anything from street to conflict to any kind of photojournalism. But I saw that there was a big gap, and the gap was no animal stories. Wildlife, sure. Conservation, sure. Pets, sure. But what about the animals in factory farms, research labs, the animals we wear and use for entertainment and so on? We weren't really telling those stories. And photographers are always looking for their story, their thing they can do. And when I landed on that, I realized I would have a lifetime of work ahead of me, unfortunately. So skip ahead to over 20 years later. And my project on animals, WeAnimals, has become WeAnimalsMedia. We have about a dozen staff, over 100 photographers. We have coined the genre animal photojournalism, and we are out in the world telling these stories, making these animals visible.
And I just got your newsletter, and we were just saying offline how I loved how one of your quotes was, try and try again, just keep at it. And I mentioned that my favorite quote, one of them is by Samuel Beckett, the author, who wrote, ever tried, ever failed, try again, fail better. And I think part of this work is just that it never ends, right?
It never ends, and we're new to this in the animal world. We don't have a long, glorious history of studying animals. Looking at animals in a kind way. And Jonathan knows this well as well. I love going to Jonathan's talks because he just gets you to love the animals that he loves and that he's researched so extensively. And there's another quote, I don't know who it's from, but you protect what you love. And that's something that both Jonathan and I do. Is we are storytellers in our own right. And you want to get people to fall in love with what you care about, because then they will protect it, just as Jonathan and I want to protect animals.
Protect what you love. It's a quote by Jacques-Yves Cousteau, the renowned French oceanographer, filmmaker, and conservationist. We only protect what we love. We only love what we understand. We only understand what we are taught. That's the link between education and emotion, between learning and love. It leads me to this quote by Albert Einstein about how we humans experience ourselves, our thoughts, and our feelings as, quote, something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. That leads well into a question I have for you, Jonathan. You've written extensively about animal intelligence, consciousness, sentience. The first part of the question is, how do you explain to a lay audience the difference between these three things, intelligence, consciousness, and sentience? And secondly, what's a way for all of us to extend this circle of compassion to all sentient beings?
Sure. Well, the first part, consciousness, sentience, I forget the third word you mentioned.
Intelligence.
Intelligence, sure. They're all interconnected. The word sentience, I'm grateful to be seeing it more and more now. I think in Europe they know that term, but here in North America, it's still most people are not familiar with that word. It's very important. It's the capacity to feel. And feeling means having experiences. And having experiences means sort of, back to the word you said, self, means you're a being, you're an individual, unique with a consciousness and awareness. Feelings, it may vary how these feelings are felt and expressed in different groups of animals and species, but an animal who has sentience is automatically qualified for moral weight and moral concern, and I think that's a key follow-on from being sentient. And we're finding, the collective scientists and people who are interested in these subjects are finding that every time you look around, the sphere of sentience on this planet, it gets bigger. Case in point, the current issue of Scientific American has an article by a wonderful British researcher, a specialist in insect cognition and behavior, named Lars Chitka, and it's all about pain and joy in insects. I can tell you it. You probably know. I'm sure Joanne knows this. A generation ago, no one was talking about any kind of sentience in insects, which make up 80% of all the living animals on the planet. They're a hugely important group. It's almost overwhelming to think that they might be sentient, but it's important to know if they are. It's important to know. And as somebody who's written 2 books about animal pleasure, it doesn't just mean that there's more pain and suffering in the world. It means there's more experience, there's more individuals who are experiencing lives, and that includes not just pain and suffering, but also pleasure and joy.
Thank you. I guess it's the pleasure part that is new to me. I've done quite a bit of research, and my daughters and I, a couple of years ago, became vegetarian, and animal suffering and pain is something that's talked about a lot. But this idea of pleasure, beyond your dog smiling at you, is a little different for us to consider, especially with, I know two of the most recent books you were about fish and insects. So we tend to not associate pleasure with, say, fish and insects especially. So anyway, I think it's remarkable work. Do you have one example, for example, that you might give of pleasure being so a little harder for us to capture in our daily pet scenario?
Sure. There are fishes who will approach trusted divers to get petted and caressed, and you can, in the current era, we have access to YouTube that allows you to see video clips of that sort of thing. Another manifestation of that is a study which showed that being caressed, being stroked, has a stress relieving effect on a fish. In the case of insects, one of Chitka's lab studies has just been published a couple of years ago, I think, and it's sort of about play. It shows that bumblebees will take a detour to play with rolling balls, colored balls, to play with them, almost like playing soccer, en route to a food source. Rather than making a beeline to the food source, they take a detour to balls. There's no food involved, no nectar reward, no sex, no other sort of basis for it being anything other than play. That's the conclusion, and that's sort of the kind of science we're seeing today. The fact that scientists are asking these questions says a lot about the revolution going on in the expanded universe of animal sentience.
I'm glad we're talking about playing, because that's something I do for a living. I play for a living, which, to some people might seem like a joke, but it's anything but. As storytellers, one has to be playful. One has to cultivate the sense of humor and creativity and joy in order to actually communicate our story. So Joe, you and I have talked quite a bit about just about vegetarianism. I know in our first talk, it probably came up. You're both vegan, I think. Is that correct? You and Jonathan as well? Probably have been for many years, but it's pretty recent for me. And I talk to a lot of meat eaters in our family who are generally intrigued by my choice and my daughter's choice. And it's often standing at a barbecue in the summer as I kind of cook my Beyond Meat burgers next to theirs. And, we talk about why. They ask why. And I usually talk about reducing the environmental footprint, but my main beef, so to speak, is factory farming and industrial fishing, which inflict this unnecessary suffering at this unsustainable scale. And they treat animals as these feelingless machines who don't feel pain and distress. So you both know this. And Joanne, you've made it part of your mission with WeAnimalsMedia to bring this suffering to light through your photography. My question is, from a generational point of view, you being slightly younger than me and Jonathan, would you say we're heading in the right direction? And is your audience more and more receptive to your message?
Ooh, well, I think that things are getting both better and worse. It depends on the country. It depends on their economy. There are many countries who associate with increased meat eating with status. And the health concerns are not an issue or a question for many people. And certainly animal sentience is not on the radar at all. It's on the radar in countries that have media that will publish these kinds of stories. But we also see that in some countries, we're just getting to know about factory farming. We're understanding sentience. There are a lot of people from a lot of different angles tackling this problem and making the problem visible. We're seeing the growth of animal law. We're seeing ethology. We're seeing the arts. We're seeing young influencers. Let's go right to Greta Thunberg, who doesn't eat animals. And so when cultures and countries have these kinds of influences, there's going to be less meat eating. Nevertheless, we vegetarians and vegans are a minority, a major minority in populations generally. And that's also because to question animal eating really questions our core, our understanding of ourselves, our traditions. People are very defensive, also because meat tastes good. And I always remember that I ate animals for half my life. I'm not better than other people. I know what it's like to want to hold on to the taste and traditions and so on. And so when I approach people or people approach me about not eating animals, I just keep it really friendly and open. I stay open to questions and conversations and encourage people to make any step that they can, because that is a step that will reduce animal suffering.
Vegetarianism. I became a vegetarian a few years ago with my 2 daughters, and we each had different reasons. As someone who tours a lot, my ecological footprint is substantial, and research showed me that I could cut it in half simply by cutting meat from my diet. But it was also a personal protest against factory farming, which is responsible for the suffering of billions of fellow sentient, intelligent animals. Now, am I personally going to stop factory farming or slow down climate change? No. Especially when you read that 70% of the world's greenhouse gases can be traced back to 100 mega companies. But individual choices do matter, and they can have a huge influence on the communities we're connected to, from families to friend groups to neighbors and colleagues. In other words, small things add up. Jonathan, what have you found the most persuasive way to communicate the ethics? Not to convince someone to become vegetarian or vegan, but to basically make the case. Because I find I'm in that situation a lot, and I don't know, should I be pulling the environmental card? Should I talk more about ethics? Like, what's the best way you found talking to many people who might be listening right now?
Well, I don't know if I found it. I don't feel like the model vegan when it comes to being an ambassador, but that's the way I like to think of it, is vegans are, whether they like it or not, ambassadors for a lifestyle choice that, as Joanne just explained, there's a lot of basis for resistance to that lifestyle. Nowadays, certainly for us in a society that we have what we need, we have our needs met. We're not living in poverty. Another key word that Joanne mentioned that's such a retardant to moral progress is the fact that people are leading hard scrabble lives, just trying to make a living and get food on the table. But as an ambassador, yeah, being friendly, being happy, being smiling, being, obviously not absurdly so, but being normal. I mean, being vegan is not an abnormal thing. Wanting to not fund and support industries that commit horrible acts of violence in a very large scale. I can say that to you three. I wouldn't probably quite word it that way, but if somebody asked me, I would. But it's very rewarding. The food that we have available as vegans living in North America is incredible. There's no gustatory sacrifice to not eating meat. It's when you get to social issues, the Thanksgiving dinners, the eating out, then it gets complicated, and that's when we try to be ambassadors. I'm not pushy about it. I'm probably unpushy to a fault. I think when I reflect on my own activities and style as a vegan and ambassador, I feel like I should say more. I should get involved in it. Happy to respond to people ask, but I don't tend to broach it. I just try to lead by example.
Right.
I'm the same, Jonathan, and I try and lead by example through the work that I do. And perhaps you do as well. You have an awful lot of writing out in the world, which is very influential. And I prefer doing it that way as well.
What do you feel about cultured meats or lab-grown meat, no-kill meat? We're reading more and more about the market for alternative proteins, meat substitutes. It's huge. And so for those who don't know, I know you do, but cultured meat or lab-grown meat contains real meat, I believe, grown from cells derived from living animals, but in a lab without the killing. So Joanne, if one of your goals is to reduce the suffering of animals, is this considered a good thing?
Yeah, I'm very interested in this progress and technology. To me, it remains to be seen if it can be the game changer that it professes that it might be. It's very expensive. We're pouring billions of dollars into producing these products. And, if it will get meat eaters, these things aren't really for vegans, but if it will get meat eaters to eat less meat and to move over to lab-grown meat, well, that's great. But let's see if people really want to eat lab-grown meat. There's an ick-factor there that we are going to have to market our way out of. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, when I think of the ick-factor, I think, hey, eat that stuff. You're avoiding mucus, blood, animal suffering, transport trucks, filth. feces. I mean, the list is long, as you well know. Yeah, my attitude about something like lab-grown meat is strength and diversity. It's another option. It's another channel. As for the money being spent, it's a great point, Joanne. I like to think that some of that money is being taken away from being funding animal food production, but meat production. But I'm probably completely wrong about that. I grew up like the rest of us here. We grew up eating meat, and yeah, I didn't stop eating it because I didn't like the taste of it. And I do like to support those companies that are producing really very tasty meat-like stuff to go with my veggies.
You get the argument sometimes from detractors of Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger going, yeah, it's the chemicals. I'm like, yeah, do you have any idea what goes into your meat? You just mentioned a few of the ick-factor. Joe, so photojournalism, you brought it up before. I know this is your passion. It's what you've been doing for so many years, and maybe more recently with animals. Obviously, the impulse to create images has been around for a long, long time. Cave paintings, medieval or Renaissance chapels. Humans, we've always tried to communicate through image, because maybe the adage is sometimes true that picture's worth 1,000 words. It's also true of journalism, of course, and I'm a news junkie. I'll always go to news sites before social media. And when I go to, say New York Times or globalmail.com, I've trained my eye away from the distracting images of advertising, and I go right to the lead image in a story, which is key to me if I'm going to go into that story. And so journalism and photojournalism, to me, seem far from dead, in my opinion. They're just evolving like everything else. And how do you describe the state of photojournalism today compared to an era that you can remember when we weren't inundated by images, both fake and real, online? What's the state of the union today with photojournalism?
You mentioned, photojournalism being dead. That was a big question a couple decades ago. Big statements. Let's question this. Is photojournalism dead? I don't see how it can be when you need people on the front lines to document. There are two components there: photo and journalism. You're combining these two to create visuals that very few people can do well. Very few people want to do, because you're often putting yourself in danger, and it's like long stretches away from family. It's a very challenging field to work in. But, if AI presents a challenge to photojournalism, I don't think AI will be super quick to create the stories that go along with the images that we're making. What is it like to be somewhere, whether you're in a conflict zone or the conflict zone of a pig farm, where animals are deprived of their most basic needs? And it's not like making portraits of animals the way we've so often seen in history. These images aren't made so that we can gaze at an animal. It's meant to be immersive in their experiences. And again, very few people are going to do that. And so, I think this genre that we've created is going to be around for a while. These are images that are meant to change. These are images made for action. They aren't images to be, flying by in the news cycles and social media and off they go. No, they need to stick around. They need to be in books. They need to be on walls. They need to be in academia, discussing what's going on here and why, and do things need to change and why.
Animal photojournalism. Photojournalism, using photographs to tell a story, has been around since the invention of photography in the mid-19th century. But animal photojournalism, or APJ, is just emerging, and WeAnimalsMedia is one of its pioneers. Drawing from their website, quote, "Animal photojournalism is in part defined by what it is not," unquote. It's not animal conservation photography, which is also important as it documents endangered and threatened species in the wild. But APJ is more inclusive, documenting animals that are closer to us, the ones we know, eat, and wear. Cows, pigs, chickens. But not the ones frolicking in fields, the ones concealed in cages. Like conflict or war photography, animal photojournalism breaks stories that, for political and economic reasons, are kept hidden from us. Jonathan, are you an image person? Are you struck and moved by images as often as you are text?
We're a very visual species, back to our sentience. And I've seen images working in animal protection for 30 plus years. I've seen images that I would love to be able to unsee. With some of these images sear themselves into the brain. It's so important that the images be there, though, because so few people are plugged into what's really going on behind the scenes. So we so need Joanne's project and her colleagues, brave photojournalists, to document what's there. It's so useful and important for people like me, anyone who's an advocate for animals, to be able to point to the WeAnimals website, Joanne's website, and all the things they're doing, and so people can actually see for themselves. Because the industries that are abusing animals are not in a hurry to bring their practices to light. We need people to go in and get the information and make it visual. And we live in the internet age, so access is terrifically high if people are looking for it.
I can just add to that. You mentioned access, and farms aren't in a hurry to make what they do visible. That's absolutely right. And that's why we are seeing Ad-gag laws in North America very much. Right now in Canada, they're tabling a federal Ad-gag law, which would criminalize all of my work across the country. We're currently seeing Ad-gag laws in provinces, but not across the country. So it would be illegal, with steep fines and possibly incarceration, for me to stop at a truck with pigs in it and photograph inside the truck. It would make it illegal for me to, in some cases, photograph the outsides of farms, even from public property. So the reason these laws are passing, which often are eventually deemed unconstitutional in the US and overturned, which costs a lot of time, money, resources to do. But these laws get passed because industries have money for lobbying. And again, people want to protect their ability to eat meat, and they do that without really a lot of thinking and knowledge and so on. So this is a big hurdle for us as photojournalists. We are providing materials for campaigners and for academics. We're providing materials for everyone to learn from. And so it's very, very important that here in Canada, that Ad-gag law is not passed. And this will be a hot topic in Canada, you'll see, in the coming months.
Well, this is a terrible segue, because from all this wonderful, serious, important conversation, I now need to take us to the silly. But perhaps those two things are not that different. We're going to talk about how animals in pop culture, sometimes in moving pictures, television, might make their appearance, and sometimes move people to, either think twice about various animals. But basically, what I'm saying is that it's the game show. The points don't matter. Nothing matters in this other than just the spirit of just having a bit of fun right now. Okay, Jonathan, thumbs up, ready? 1993 movie about an orca whale in captivity.
Free Willy.
Ding. 1995 movie about a pig who wants to be a sheep herder. Easy.
Babe.
Babe. Name of the sheep cloned in 1997.
Dolly.
Dolly.
Joanne, you can't say anything right now, okay?
I'm just so excited.
Okay.
I wish it was Salvador Dolly, but it's just Dolly.
Jonathan, what kind of fish is Nemo in Finding Nemo? Easy.
A clownfish.
Okay, a little harder. What kind of fish is Dory in Finding Dory?
A royal blue tang, I think.
Man, you're good. You're as good as they say you are. Okay, hard one. When the Obamas were in the White House, they had a Portuguese water dog. What was the name of their dog?
Is it Bo?
Damn!
Is it Bo?
Yeah, it's Bo. How am I going to stump him? In 2017, this is a YouTube question. Over 1 million people watched April, the name of the animal, give birth live on YouTube. What kind of animal is April?
I don't know that one. I'll say an orca.
Nope. Joanne?
A sheep or a giraffe?
Ding, giraffe. You got it on your second guess. I'll give it to you. The name of Harry Potter's owl.
Hedwig.
Man, what country does Hello Kitty come from?
Japan.
Man, I have two more questions. In the 2007 animated movie Ratatouille, what's the name of the celebrity rat chef?
No, I saw that film and loved it, but I don't remember that.
The French name? Joanne?
Gaston.
No, Remy. And the name of the monkey on Friends on TV?
Oh, I never ever watched that show. No
Joanne?
clue.
I've never seen that show.
Never watched Friends? You really are going to suck at this, Joanne.
Friends when I was traveling through Laos, and they had it on every TV in all the tourist joints.
Oh boy, that's okay. You're going to get none of these questions, but digital bravo to Jonathan. You did very well there. The name of the monkey, by the way, was Marcel. Joanne, easy. Famous border collie on TV in the 1950s. The famous dog on TV.
No, see, I'm here to get stumped on all the questions. I will be the opposite of Jonathan here. And I just want to go forward and be like, here's the one pop reference that I know, but we'll get to that at the end.
Why don't you give yourself a point? Ask yourself a question and I'll give you a point. Go ahead.
Okay. Who is the TV character who's related to the line or song, "You can't make friends with salad"?
The only thing I could think of would be SpongeBob SquarePants.
You don't make bread with salad. You don't make Homer Simpson.
Yeah, it's Lisa who's the vegetarian.
There you go, Lisa.
She gets made fun of. That's it. Okay.
That's it. Okay. So border collie on TV in the 1950s. Jonathan?
Is it Lassie?
Ding. Okay, name the famous talking horse. A horse is a horse, of course. And no one talks to her unless it's the famous Mr.
I only know like a Black Beauty or something.
Mr.
I don't know.
Jonathan?
Ed.
This
is from my era.
I know it's from your era. That's why I'm asking Joanne those questions from that era.
No. How about this? Let me interrupt with another one, which is like, who is the famous lab who gets shot at the end of the film? And I think it's a Disney film. See, the reason I am the way I am in my photojournalism, I go to the dark stuff. I remember the dark stuff. So
who got shot?
Old Yeller.
Old Yeller thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Tom Hanks movie, Turner and
Pooch.
Ding. Canadian TV show, classic with a wandering German shepherd who'd go around solving problems.
Oh, yeah. Little Hobo.
Little Hobo. Ding. You're doing well. Famous novel by Jack London about a wolf dog.
Call of the Wild.
White.
Or White Fang.
Ding. Well, what kind of animal, other than Sigourney Weaver, does not get eaten by alien in the movie? She goes to rescue a what? What pet?
Well, I love that the animal doesn't get.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Take a wild guess, a very common domestic pet, and I'll give you a point.
How about a dog?
Cat.
Okay.
Ginger tomcat named Jones. In 1957, what was the name of the dog the Soviets sent into space that got the Americans all in a huff?
Laika.
Yes.
I told you I remember the depressing stuff.
Good. Famous cat and mouse duo from the 1940s and beyond.
Jonathan.
Tom and Joanne. Come on. Jonathan.
Jerry.
In Bugs Bunny, what species of animal sounds like this? That's the wild turkey surprise. Thank you. Who's that? Oh, come on, Joanne.
Pretend you don't know, Joanne. That way he has to do it again.
It's like a Tasmanian devil or something.
That's it.
Did you say Tasmanian devil?
Said it.
Yeah, I did.
Great. You're never going to get this. Oh, maybe it's dark. Maybe you'll get it. The name of the dictator pig in George Orwell's novel Animal Farm.
There's a great song rendition of that book by Dead Prez, and they are a vegan rap group. But
named after a famous emperor.
Yeah.
Is it Nero or Napoleon? I'm just trying to give you points.
Sorry, guys.
Take a guess.
Mao.
No, I just said, is it Nero or Napoleon? She says Mao.
Like, for example.
It's Napoleon. Okay. Finally, for both of you, okay, this is where you might be on equal footing here. I'm not sure. Just raise your hand first so I can see that you got this answer. What is a female donkey called? Joanne. Oh, Jonathan?
Jenny.
Ding. How many hearts does an octopus have?
1.
3. And raise your hand, Joanne, so I know how to play the game, okay?
She's got her hand up the whole time. That way.
Yeah, that's right. That's not fair. What is a rhino's horn made out of? Jonathan.
Hair.
Keratin, which is part of hair, right? That's connected to hair. Okay, good. Which animal has the largest eyes in the animal kingdom? Jonathan?
Giant squid.
Yep, colossal squid, even bigger. How many compartments does a cow's stomach have? Jonathan? Oh, Joanne, let's give one to Joanne.
She said 5. I think it's 4.
No?
Were you just
I went
raising
like
your
this
hand?
To raise my hand for 4.
No, you said
Four,
5,
correct.
Joanne. That was very clear.
Now you're getting picky here, Jonathan. You're up like 25-5 here, okay? So
I'm feeling picked
Back
on.
off. Back off.
Okay. Ants warn each other of danger by doing what? Jonathan, you probably know this, being the insect specialist.
Releasing pheromones.
Correct.
Pheromones.
Exactly. The largest animal on Earth, Joanne?
A whale?
Which one?
Not the mink. The blue whale.
Correct. And a couple last questions. I love these questions. What is a group of crows called?
A murder.
Okay, you got to raise your hand. I'm going to give you that point, but Jonathan's
I
playing
have
by the rules.
ADHD. This is classic ADHD. We interrupt people. So,
What is a
I'll
group of owls called? Jonathan,
Parliament.
what do you call a group of zebras? This is my favorite. It's my second.
A stripe.
No, it's a dazzle of zebras. It's like,
Oh, that
what?
was a good one.
And I'm assuming this is true, of course. I found it on the reliable internet. What is a group of pandas called? This is the best. No points there, but it's an embarrassment of pandas.
Good to know.
Good to know. Yeah, just, Jonathan, if anyone asks you, you learned a hell of a lot in these 45 minutes that we spoke together. So thank you both. I hope you had a good time.
Great time. And thanks for broaching this subject.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us. It's always
Great.
lovely to see both of you.
And thanks to you, as always, for listening. A special shout out to my two guests, Jonathan Balcombe and Joanne McArthur. Please check out their important work on behalf of animals at jonathanbalcombe.com and WeAnimalsMedia.org. My name is Rick Miller, and I wrote, recorded, and edited this episode with multimedia by my team at Kidoons. For more about the Boom Trilogy and our many other projects, visit kidoons.com or boomtheshow.com. Thanks also, as always, to my partners on this podcast, Leap, an online community where life experience meets innovation, created by CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. For more info or to become a Leap member, visit cabi.com/leap. If you're on a podcast player, please follow us, write a review, tell someone about this or other episodes you liked. You can also send me any questions, comments, or feedback, Rick Miller Actor on Twitter or Instagram, or email rick@rickmiller.ca. And hey, in a polarized world, you have a choice. Build a wall or build a bridge. Build bridges, not walls.
Xing the gap.